under the relentless heat of the Botswana sun. The skeletal frame of what was once a majestic African lion lay motionless near a desiccated watering hole. His emaciated body, a shadow of its former glory, bore the unmistakable signs of prolonged starvation. Each rib was prominently visible beneath his dull, matted coat, and his once powerful physique had deteriorated to mere skin and bones. Veterinarian Dr. Kevin Richardson, renowned for his unique bond with big cats, was on an anti-poaching patrol in the remote Kalahari region when his guide, Tobogamo, spotted the lion. At first glance, Richardson believed the lion was already dead, given his shallow breathing and lifeless appearance. However, upon closer inspection, he realized the animal was still clinging to life. The lion, estimated to be around 8 years old, was found lying alone, too weak to lift his massive head. His sunken eyes and tangled mane painted a grim picture of his suffering. Open sores covered his body, likely from lying motionless for days, and his breathing was labored and irregular. As Richardson knelt beside the dying predator, he anticipated some sign of aggression or fear. Instead, the lion slowly turned his head and made direct eye contact. It wasn't a threatening stare, but rather a pleading gaze, as if the creature understood that help had arrived. It was like he was asking me to save him, Richardson recalled. I've worked with hundreds of big cats, but I've never seen that level of awareness, that human-like plea for help in an animal's eyes. The lion's condition was critical. Severe dehydration had turned his gums white, and his body temperature was dangerously low despite the desert heat. Richardson estimated that the animal had been without food for at least 3 weeks and without water for several days. Most concerning were the lion's hind legs, which appeared to be paralyzed, likely the reason he'd been unable to hunt or reach water sources. Faced with a heart-wrenching decision, Richardson chose to attempt an unprecedented field rescue of the dying lion, rather than following standard protocol to euthanize the suffering animal. Every fiber of my veterinary training told me this lion was beyond saving, Richardson admitted, but something in his eyes, some spark of will to live, made me believe he deserved a fighting chance. Working quickly in the fading daylight, Richardson established in 4-line to begin emergency fluid therapy. The lion remained completely still during the procedure, as if understanding that the human beside him was trying to help. Richardson administered pain medication, antibiotics, and electrolyte solutions, while Mo radioed for helicopter evacuation to the nearest wildlife facility over 200 miles away. As darkness fell over Kalahari, Richardson made the difficult decision to spend the night beside the dying lion, monitoring his vital signs and continuing fluid therapy. The desert temperature dropped rapidly after sunset, and Richardson covered the lion with emergency blankets from his vehicle, then positioned himself as a windbreak to protect the animal from the cold desert winds. Throughout that first night, the lion's eyes never left Richardson's face. Every time the veterinarian checked a 4-line or adjusted the blankets, the lion would respond with soft, almost grateful sounds, not the typical vocalizations of a wild predator, but something closer to the contented rumbling of a house cat. It was surreal, Richardson later described. Here I was, alone in the desert with a dying lion who should have been terrified of human contact, and instead, he seemed to trust me completely. He somehow understood I was there to help him. The helicopter evacuation at dawn was treacherous, requiring Richardson to sedate the lion while maintaining his critical 4 fluids during the flight to Mount Animal Hospital. Dr. Sarah Tilhagel, the facility's head veterinarian, was skeptical when she received Richardson's radio call requesting emergency surgery facilities for a wild lion rescue. Kevin, you're talking about a full-grown male lion who's been starving for weeks, Dr. Tilhagel had argued over the radio. Even if we save him, he'll never be releasable back to the wild. His paralysis means he can't hunt or defend himself. But when the helicopter landed and Dr. Tilhagel saw the lion's condition firsthand, her medical instincts overrode her practical concerns. The animal was indeed dying, but his vital signs had stabilized slightly during Richardson's overnight intervention. More remarkably, the lion showed no aggression despite being surrounded by multiple humans in an unfamiliar environment. His behavior was completely contrary to everything we know about wild lion psychology, Dr. Tilhagel later documented in her medical report. He allowed us to transfer him to the surgical table, accepted an oxygen mask, and remained calm throughout our examination. It was as if he understood we were trying to save his life. Diagnostic tests revealed the full extent of the lion's condition. He had suffered a severe spinal injury, likely from a fall or attack by another lion, which had left his hindquarters paralyzed. Weeks of being unable to hunt had led to extreme malnutrition and multiple organ complications. His chances of survival were estimated at less than 10%. The surgery to address his spinal injury took 8 hours. Throughout the procedure, Richardson remained in the operating room, his presence seeming to have a calming effect on the lion, even under anesthesia. When the animal began to wake up, his eyes immediately searched for and found Richardson's face. Recovery was slow and uncertain. The lion, whom Richardson named Tao after the Setswana word for lion, required round-the-clock care. Richardson took extended leave from his regular duties to oversee Tao's rehabilitation personally. The veterinarian set up a cot in the recovery room and spent 3 weeks sleeping beside the lion, monitoring his progress and providing constant companionship. What happened during those weeks of recovery astonished the medical staff. Tao began exhibiting behaviors never before documented in wild lions. He would become visibly distressed when Richardson left the room, even for short periods. When Richardson returned, Tao would make soft chuffing sounds and attempt to nuzzle his hand despite his weakened condition. It was like watching a bond form between family members. Nurse Jennifer Mormey observed. Tao responded to Kevin's voice, calmed at his touch, and seemed to find comfort in his presence in ways that defied scientific explanation. As Tao grew stronger, his personality began to emerge. Despite being a wild predator, he showed remarkable gentleness around Richardson and the medical staff. He learned to accept physical therapy sessions for his paralyzed legs, seeming to understand that the uncomfortable exercises were helping him heal. The breakthrough came during the 4th week of recovery. Richardson was conducting a routine examination when Tao did something that left everyone speechless. The lion, who had been unable to move his hind legs since his rescue, suddenly lifted his tail and flexed his back paws. The spinal injury was healing, and sensation was returning to his lower body. Dr. Tilhagel called it medically inexplicable. The type of spinal damage Tao had suffered typically resulted in permanent paralysis. Yet somehow, through what she could only describe as an extraordinary will to live, combined with the intensive care and emotional support Richardson provided, Tao was defying medical expectations. Video footage of Tao's first attempts to stand went viral on social media, shared millions of times around the world. The images of Richardson supporting the lion as he took his first wobbly step since his rescue moved viewers to tears, and donations began pouring in from around the globe to support Tao's continued rehabilitation. 6 months after his rescue, Tao had made a recovery that veterinary experts called medically impossible. The lion, who had been paralyzed and dying in the Kalahari Desert, was now walking, running, and displaying the strength and vitality of a healthy adult male. But what happened next would capture the world's attention in ways no one anticipated. Richardson had built a specialized enclosure at his research facility designed to accommodate Tao's unique needs as a formerly wild lion who could never be released back to nature. The plan was simple. Provide Tao with a comfortable retirement where he could live out his days in safety, away from the dangers that had nearly killed him. Tao had other ideas. On a warm October morning, as Richardson entered the enclosure for their daily interaction, Tao did something that left the veterinarian stunned. The lion approached him slowly, then gently took Richardson's wrist in his massive jaws, not biting, but holding it with the delicate precision of a mother lion carrying her cub. Tao then began leading Richardson toward the gate of the enclosure, his intention. As the days passed, Tao's integration with the pride grew deeper and more intricate. Though once a solitary, broken animal, Tao now assumed protective, almost paternal role among the lionesses and their cubs. It was as if he had been reborn, not only in body but in purpose. Richardson observed Tao's behavior closely, documenting the incredible development. He noted how Tao would keep watch during the heat of the day, positioning himself on a ridge that overlooked the dry savanna where the lionesses hunted for dwindling prey. If danger appeared, even the distant rumble of a poacher's vehicle or the scent of rival males on the wind, Tao would emit a low, guttural warning, prompting the pride to retreat into safer cover. In one instance, Richardson watched in awe as Tao carefully herded the cubs away from a poisoned watering hole, one that had previously been contaminated by poachers targeting larger game. Tao seemed to remember the consequences of tainted water. His own brush with dehydration and death had made him cautious. It was clear he was doing more than just surviving. He was thinking, remembering, choosing, and always he kept Richardson close. The scientific community found itself grappling with new, profound questions. Ethologists and biologists pored over every second of footage, every journal entry made by Richardson, every frame of video captured during Tao's extraordinary journey. Could lions form moral reasoning? Was this display of empathy and forward-thinking a unique phenomenon, or a window into an underexplored emotional depth in apex predators? Interviews with top wildlife researchers aired across international news platforms. Some experts suggested Tao's actions represented the evolutionary peak of interspecies cooperation, a rare alignment of intelligence, trauma, and trust. Others hesitated, pointing out the danger of anthropomorphizing wild behavior. But all agreed on one thing: what they were witnessing was unprecedented. Back at the rescue facility, donations from across the globe funded an expansion of Tao's enclosure and the creation of a new rehabilitation wing dedicated to long-term care for large predators. A research grant in Tao's name was launched, allowing young veterinarians and wildlife conservationists to study complex animal behaviors and emotional intelligence in carnivores. Tao had not only changed the lives of those around him, he had shifted the global dialogue on what animals were truly capable of feeling. Meanwhile, the pride Tao had introduced Richardson to began thriving under support they now received. The supplemental water stations and food drops, strictly monitored by local authorities and conservationists, stabilized the cubs' health and gave the lionesses the strength they needed to return to effective hunting. Over time, they relied less on feeding programs and resumed a more natural lifestyle, aided by seasonal rains that gradually revived the arid plains. Richardson observed that while the pride was returning to the wild rhythms of life, Tao remained a link between them and the humans who had ensured their survival. In a deeply symbolic moment captured on film, one of the cubs, now a healthy, inquisitive adolescent, approached Richardson during one of his check-ins, sniffing his hand before darting back to the safety of his mother. It was a silent, powerful acknowledgement. Trust was not just a bond shared between Tao and Richardson. It was spreading through generations. Tao's reputation grew beyond scientific circles. Schools used his story in curricula focused on empathy, animal intelligence, and conservation. Documentaries chronicled every phase of his rescue and recovery, his time with the pride, and the transformation he had inspired. Celebrities lent their voices to the cause, urging fans to donate to Richardson's foundation, which now operated not only as a wildlife rescue center, but as a hub for conservation education across southern Africa. In 2018, a special United Nations panel on wildlife preservation invited Richardson to speak. With Tao's image projected behind him, he spoke not only of biology and ecology, but of compassion, trust, and the often overlooked capacity of animals to teach us about ourselves. He recounted the moment Tao first looked into his eyes, not with fear or anger, but with that quiet, almost human plea, and how, despite everything science had told him about wild animal behavior, he had chosen to trust what he saw in that gaze. "That moment changed the direction of my life," Richardson said. "Tao didn't ask me for help in words. He didn't have to. He asked me with his presence, his stillness, his eyes. He taught me that love, yes, love, can exist between our species, that trust can be earned, that we as humans are not the only ones capable of gratitude or intention." The audience sat in stunned silence, many wiping tears from their eyes. Tao's story had transcended continents, cultures, and beliefs. It had become a global emblem of hope, a narrative of resilience in the face of cruelty and neglect, and a call to action in a world too often disconnected from the natural lives' effects. In the spring of 2019, Tao began to slow down. The signs were subtle at first: less playfulness, shorter walks, longer naps in the dappled sun. Richardson, who had returned to his regular conservation work, but still spent most mornings and evenings with Tao, noticed a change immediately. Though Tao still greeted him with the same gentle nudges and deep-throated purring sounds, there was a peaceful weariness behind his golden eyes. Tao had given all he could. He had healed, protected, inspired. Now, he was preparing for rest. When the end came, it was gentle and full of dignity. Tao lay beneath his favorite acacia tree in his enclosure, the soft rustle of the African wind brushing through his mane. Richardson was beside him, as he had been the day they met. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, he stroked Tao's side, feeling the rise and fall of breath that had once been so faint it was barely there. Now it slowed until it stopped. The world mourned. News channels interrupted programming to share the story of the lion who had captured humanity's collective heart. Candlelight vigils were held in cities from Cape Town to Copenhagen. Children in classrooms released drawings and poems in Tao's honor. A bronze statue was commissioned in place of the entrance to the sanctuary, Tao standing tall, eyes watchful, with Richardson's hand resting on his shoulder. Richardson never stopped telling Tao's story. In every lecture, in every conservation campaign, in every educational video produced by his team, Tao remained a guiding light. His story reminded everyone that courage isn't just found in teeth and claws. Sometimes, it's found in the quiet act of trust, in reaching out, in holding on. Years later, Richardson reflected on everything they'd gone through. The scorching sun over the parched land, the four fluids trickling into Tao's broken body, the soft rumble of gratitude in the dead of night. He thought about Tao leading him to the pride, about that moment at the gate when Tao had looked at him with eyes full of quiet insistence. "That was the day I stopped seeing myself as Tao's rescuer," he said, "and started seeing myself as a student." Tao had defied death not once, but many times. First by surviving starvation and paralysis, then by redefining what it meant to be a wild animal, and finally by choosing compassion over instinct. In his final years, Tao didn't just live. He thrived. He loved. He gave back. And in doing so, he taught the world that the line between man and beast is thinner than we ever imagined, and that perhaps in some sacred way, we are not so different after all.